All right, welcome back, boys and girls. Today I'm going to be talking about a beefy topic, and the topic is basically sales funnels. Now that you've mapped out your sales plan, we can start to create individual funnels that you'll put your target customers through in order to try and convert them. The reason why I talk about sales map before going to the funnel is because, as most early startups will find, there usually isn't a very well-defined process in order to convert a customer, especially in the early days, as you're walking through and trying to figure out what is the best decision-making journey for your customer. So don't jump to creating a specific funnel. First, start by mapping out all of the different options, the questions that someone is asking, different tools that you could use, and then you can start to create those individual funnels. So to explain what a funnel is, I'm going to quickly share my screen. There we go. So here is an example of a funnel. So you can see why it's called a funnel. It's wide on the top, narrow on the bottom. For example, there could be a certain amount of calls that you could make. And then from that, there'll be a smaller subset that will result in appointments being booked. And then from there, there'll be a smaller subset of customers that will end up being pitched to. And then number of proposals that will go out. And finally, number of customers that will close. So this here is one example. Another example of a funnel could be an email funnel. So number of emails that you send, of all of the emails that you send, not everyone will open them, not everyone will click on them. So a small amount will actually be open and read. And then even then, a smaller amount will result in people clicking through, going to your website. And then from there, they'll go to your website, you'll go to a specific sign-up page, and then they'll actually sign up, start using your product, and then they'll eventually start paying you for it. So that's an example of a funnel. So the reason why funnels are important is because when we start to build and create funnels, we can start to identify gaps that we have and identify areas for improvement. So the three main things that a funnel will do for you. First off, a funnel will help you identify areas where there are low conversions. So for example, if you notice that you're having a lot of phone calls, but not a lot of them are resulting in actual appointments, there could be something that's going wrong with that process. You might be using the wrong techniques, or maybe if it's an individual's funnel, that sales rep might not know how to get someone to that next stage, right? So identify conversion rates and weaknesses over there. Second is the funnel will also help you with identifying delays in your sales cycle. So if you notice in different stages and you track the time to get someone from one step to the next, then you can start to see what is holding you back, what is dragging out your sales cycle. And then thirdly is, if you notice with the funnel, basically at every point, you have what we call funnel leak. That means a certain amount of people will drop off and not take the next step. So for example, you could say a number of people who see my ad, number of people who click the ad, and a number of people who actually go to your product page. Naturally, there's going to be a smaller amount at each stage. What do you do to address that funnel leak, right? So that's where we can start thinking about strategies around retargeting, trying to get those customers who have been through the funnel to stay in the funnel as opposed to just dropping out of the funnel entirely. So now that we've introduced the funnel, you kind of know what it is. Typically, when I look at a company, there are two main types of funnels. So there is one funnel called the process-oriented sales funnel, and then the other funnel I like to coin as the user journey funnel. So first off, the process-oriented sales funnel, it's good for a certain type of business. So it's good to start here if you run what I call a copy-paste business. These are businesses that I refer to that don't particularly try to be innovative in nature. For example, if you're running a marketing agency, an accounting practice, a restaurant, you're doing something that's already been proven. What you want to do over here is, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, copy what your competitors are doing, as they have probably already figured out the specific processes that work well for them. And then, of course, you can improve upon this in the future. So start by creating a process-oriented funnel if you have a more traditional business. An example of a process-oriented funnel could be like one of the examples that I showed before. So it could be something like you see an ad, and from the ad, you go to the landing page. From the landing page, you sign up for a webinar. From the webinar, you actually attend the webinar. And then after they attend the webinar, they receive the post-webinar drip, and then they'll sign up for or book a strategy session with you, and then they'll actually attend the strategy session. You qualify them, and then maybe you instruct them to apply for your program or service, you receive an application, they set up for payment, and then you onboard the customer, right? So that's a very lengthy funnel, but the goal is to create and identify specifically each and every step that your customer will go through in order to convert. So that's a process-oriented funnel. Again, like I mentioned, it works well if you already have a business that's fairly proven and not entirely out of the box. The other thing I want to introduce is what I call the user journey funnel. So the user journey funnel works better if you're launching an innovative product or service, or you're going after the type of customer that is not traditionally serviced with this product or service. The idea here is not to limit you to what specific actions that you'll take to convert, but to identify where they are in the decision-making process, and then figure out what you can do to get them to the next stage, right? So I'll show you an example over here. So this is the funnel that I've used for Spring. You can see over here there are prospects, inquiries, considerations, admits, and then close. And maybe to just define how I've structured this funnel. And again, this funnel will look different for every business. So prospects are people who I think could use our product or service. Maybe they have not expressed interest. Maybe they don't even know that they have the problem yet. So that's a prospect. Inquiries are people who are actively curious. And it could be where I've reached out to a prospect and then we've booked a meeting. Then I'll move them into an inquiry stage. Or it could be that they've perhaps been to our website or maybe learned from us from a workshop and they're actively asking a bit more about Spring. And then consideration is where they're starting to, in my terms over here, consider different options and different solutions. And they might be thinking about, should I join a program like this? Should I join an accelerator program? And then admit is where they verbally commit. I like to differentiate, personally, I like to differentiate verbal commitments from actual cash in the bank, because I notice it's very easy for someone to say yes to buying the product service, but them actually providing you with payment details and signing up, that's a different story as well. So, in certain cases, in certain businesses, there might not be a distinction between verbal commitments and payments, because maybe it's a lot easier to do that. But yeah, this is specific to our funnel. And then, of course, I have close won, close loss, or parking. I like to define parking as well, is because there might be some people who are interested in your product service, but maybe now is not the right time. Maybe they're going away for holiday. Maybe they are trying to get to a certain stage in the business before they want to consider a program like this. So it's interesting to have a parking stage where you can circle back with customers after a specific time as well. So it's not going to distract you. You're not going to constantly follow up with them. So that's basically what the user journey funnel is. And I'll try to do whatever it takes to move someone to the next stage. So for example, getting someone from a prospect to an inquiry stage, it could happen through a workshop. It could happen through a webinar. It could happen through a call. It could happen through an in-person meeting, right? So it's not specifically tied down to a process. So that's what the user journey funnel is. So how exactly do you use the sales funnel and how do you create one now? So now that you've identified what type of business you fall under, whether you're a more traditional business or whether you are a more innovative business, you'll build a funnel that is either a process-oriented funnel or a user journey funnel. Now that you've created your funnel, then how exactly do you utilize it and try to optimize on it? So what you want to do is, there are 4 things to pay attention to, and 3 of them I've already mentioned before. So first off, the one that's missing is paying attention to how you're filling the funnel. How are you getting consistent top-of-funnel leads? So over here, what you want to try to do is reflect back to, and I mentioned this in the video before where I talked about growth strategies. How are you trying to acquire customers either through paid or through viral methods? So start looking at different ideas, different channels, but your goal over here is to create a consistent stream where you can constantly fill the top of funnel. And it's always new leads into funnel, not just taking old leads and putting them back in the top. So think about how can you get new leads in the funnel all the time. And then the next thing to consider that I mentioned is looking and paying close attention to conversion rates. So I'll share my screen again quickly just to show you what conversion rates will look like. And again, this is just an example, right? So for example, in this funnel here, you can see that a lot of people are falling off from the phone call to appointment stage. So that means that either you, your reps, or your organization as a whole needs to work on telecalling skills to improve how you try to carry the conversation in a call and move someone into an actual in-person appointment. This one over here you can see then is an example of where perhaps the organization or the rep has a weakness around closing skills. So you can see proposals 20 but only 2 closes. So the number will differ depending on your business, product, service, or industry, but your goal is to try to look at where your weak points are and try to optimize on that. So look at conversion points, see what you're lacking. Low conversions can usually be results of a few different symptoms, right? So for example, conversion could be low because either you have inexperienced salespeople handling the conversation. It could be low because as a result of being inexperienced, they're not using the right techniques, they're not setting clear next steps, they're not following up appropriately, things like that. Or perhaps it might just be the wrong process or wrong action that you need to take to move someone to the next stage. So maybe instead of running a demo, maybe it's more appropriate to give someone a free trial, for example. So the next thing that you'll pay attention to then is time it takes to convert someone from each stage. So you could have really good conversion rate, but you might realize that there is a huge delay between maybe, say, booking a demo to signing up for your service. And if that's the case, then what can you do to shorten the sales cycle? So I'm not going to give you any more on sales cycles. So refer to the video previously where I talked a bit about shortening sales cycles, and that will give you some ideas over there. Lastly, when we talk about funnel leak, then so what exactly is funnel leak? I mentioned before, it's when someone falls out of your funnel. So for example, recently I visited Clearly Contacts and I was looking for eyeglasses, and I added one of their glasses to the shopping cart, but I did not check out, I did not purchase. And I've noticed that what they've done is, because they know that, and they've collected my personal information for that, what they've done now is everywhere else that I go, like when I read my comics on my phone, when I'm on Facebook, I start to see Clearly Contact ads, and it's ads specific to that pair of glasses that I added to my cart. So there are different ways where you can do retargeting to try to get someone who was previously in your funnel back into your funnel again, right? So setting retargeting ads, that's one. If you have the email, even better, entering them into a specific email campaign or drip to further nurture them before circling back with them and maybe making the ask again. So those are different strategies to reduce funnel leak. So your goal over here is to think about what are different ways that I can look at my funnel to see what's working, what's not working, and where can I make improvements. So that's basically it for the sales funnel. In the next video, I'll be talking about sales channels.